Hi everybody, I am Marisa from Food in Jars, and I'm here today to make my gingery pickled blueberries for you in partnership with the folks at Fresh Preserving and Ball Canning. So I'm going to get started, dive right in and get my brine going. It starts with a cup and a half of apple cider vinegar. I'm just going to turn the heat all the way up so it comes up to a boil as quickly as possible. And then I'm going to add 3/4 of a cup of filtered water. I like to use filtered water because the Philadelphia water where I live leaves a little something to be desired, but you can use regular old tap water if your water tastes good to you. To that, I'm also going to add some granulated sugar, and you could use white granulated sugar. If you're the type that stocks the evaporated cane juice in your kitchen, that's fine too. You just want to use something that's going to not add a lot of flavor or color to the brine because we want the blueberries to be the star. Now, blueberries are one of my very favorite things to preserve. I grew up in Portland, Oregon, and we had lots of blueberry farms around the area. And so every summer I would go blueberry picking with my mom and my sister, and we would bring back 20 pounds of blueberries from Soviet Island and go home and make jam. And when I first started canning on my own, blueberries were the first fruit I made jam from. And so for me, they're sort of my foundational fruit. And here in Philadelphia, I live near New Jersey, and so one of the biggest blueberry growing regions in the country is Hamilton, New Jersey, so I get great blueberries all summer long. And so making a pickled blueberry has become one of my very favorite ways to preserve blueberries because it's a little different from jam. You know, jam you can put on sandwiches, you can stir into yogurt, but a pickled blueberry can really go in a lot of different directions. You can serve it with a cheese plate. If you're doing some sort of cured meat, it goes really nicely. I also feel like pickled blueberries can go anywhere that like cranberry sauce would go, so at Thanksgiving or Christmas or even Hanukkah if you're doing potato latkes. A little dollop of pickled blueberries goes really nicely on them. So they're just a really delicious, versatile preserve that is a little different from what you might normally be making, and so it's a fun and easy project to do and mix up your blueberry preserves. So these are gingery pickled blueberries. So in addition to my sugar and vinegar and water, I also want to slice up some fresh ginger root. And I love the flavor of ginger. It adds such zippiness and kind of punchiness to a preserve, and so it really goes well. Before I slice this up, I'm just going to give my pickling liquid a little stir here because I could see that I've got it on such high heat that the sugar hasn't quite dissolved, and so it could have started caramelizing if I wasn't careful. So I'm just going to give that a little stir to prevent any caramelization from occurring. So my sliced ginger for the brine. I'm just going to slice up maybe 6 slices. I like to have enough to tuck a couple into each jar of the finished preserve, and this makes approximately 3 pints. So I'm going to throw those in and stir it around and bring it up to a boil. Now let's talk a little bit about our blueberries. We're coming to the end of blueberry season, and so for me it's really important to preserve blueberries when they're in season. These are local New Jersey blueberries. I have about 3 pounds that I've washed and picked over. Although I'm sure as I pour them into the brine I'm going to find some stems and leaves that I missed. It's just inevitable. But it looks like my brine, my sugar is fully dissolved, and it's near to boil, so I'm going to dump these guys in. And it's funny, you're going to think at first when you make this, it's not possible that there's going to be enough liquid for all those blueberries. And at first it doesn't look like there is, but as soon as they warm for just a minute, and of course I see more, they were at the very bottom of the colander, I see more stems. As soon as they start to all heat up together, you're going to find that the liquid will sort of grow to fit the amount of blueberries you put in the pot, which is really handy. All right, so one of the other really fun side benefits of making a pickled fruit, whether you're doing blueberries or you could also do like peach slices or nectarines, apricots pickle really well, is that you get 2 products in one. It's not just that you're going to have these lovely pickled blueberries, but inevitably when you have when you've gotten everything into the jars, you're going to have some brine left over. And don't throw it away. That brine is delicious. It is sort of tangy and sweet and flavored from the blueberry and the ginger. And if you've heard about fruit shrubs, it's sort of a growing trend, drinking vinegars or fruit shrubs. That's essentially what you have once you've packed all of the blueberries into their jars and topped them off with brine. That leftover liquid is at its core a fruit shrub, and so you can take it and use it in cocktails. You could use it in sparkling water. I don't really drink much, I just don't have the head for it, and so I often, when everybody else is having a cocktail, I'll just take some of the syrup that's left over from a pickled blueberry or pickled peach, put it into a glass with some ice and sparkling water, and feel like I have a really festive and fun drink that doesn't have any alcohol and makes me feel like I'm part of the party. So it's a really great ingredient that way. It also, you can use it as a glaze for meat. You can sort of boil it down a little bit, concentrate those flavors, and use it that way. You could also use it in a salad dressing, in a vinaigrette. So you take some of the blueberry, gingery, tangy, sweet syrup that's left over from making these blueberries, whisk in a little olive oil, some salt, some pepper, maybe a bit of diced shallot, and toss that with your greens and have a really delicious fruity salad dressing. So it's a really versatile ingredient that I love having in my refrigerator or on the pantry shelf. All right, so I'm just reaching in. I really did a terrible job of removing the stems, it turns out. I tried, but you know, sometimes life is not perfect. Another fun thing that you can do with these pickled blueberries is serve them with pound cake. And I know that might sound sort of counterintuitive, because pound cake, you want something that's purely sweet. But really, when you have something that's so rich and dense like a slice of pound cake, something that has a little bit of sweet and tang can be a really refreshing and surprising balance to the richness of that pound cake. And so I wouldn't necessarily just plate it up, but put it out if you were having like a dessert sort of potluck or something, and tell people, you know, a little whipped cream, a little pickled blueberry, you'd get the sweet and the richness and that tanginess that's going to balance everything really well. All right, so the goal here is to just bring these back up to a boil, and we are nearly there. And then once they're at a boil, we're going to funnel them into the jars. Now I have my jars in the electric canner here. I'm just going to rest my lid there. I brought it up to a boil earlier so that my jars are nice and warm. And I'm just going to pull them out and put them right here on this tray. When I'm dealing with sort of runny, sticky things, I do like to use a rimmed cookie sheet to contain the mess a little bit more. It just keeps everything a little bit cleaner, so that instead of having a huge sticky mess to clean up, you have a small sticky mess. I'm using the Ball limited edition purple jars because blueberries and purple go so well together, you know, and sometimes these jars, the food you put in them doesn't look great, and so if you have something like a blueberry, which is already purple, putting them in the purple jars is really nice. So now I'm going to grab my canning funnel, and this is just a tip from my mom. She always would dip her canning funnel into the water of the canner before using it to funnel food into the jars, to make sure that she wasn't introducing any dog hair or dust into her jars. And it seems like a reasonable tip to me, so I always do it as well. Alright, so I'm going to start filling up our jars. I'm using a slotted spoon, or I guess a perforated spoon, so that I can get the maximum amount of berries into my jars. I'm going to snug this tray right up next to the pot so that I minimize my sticky mess. And make sure as you're filling that you get a slice or two of ginger in every jar to get that good flavor. And you know that your berries are ready to go in the jar when they have started to burst, but they haven't sort of exploded their berryness, their essential berryness all over the place. And so these are perfect. And so once we get the berries into the jars, I'm going to take a ladle and top them off with the syrup so that they're completely submerged. And then I'll tap them and I'll wiggle with a spatula to try to make sure that I've gotten all of the air bubbles out, to make sure that my quality is really good. And you're shooting to have about a ½ inch of headspace here, so you don't want to fill them up too high. You want to leave some space so that they can expand a little bit, because when you can whole fruit, it often sort of expands a little bit in the canning process and then kind of contracts again as they cool. And so you just want to leave space for that. All right, almost full. It smells so good in here. This blueberry, sort of like a tangy blueberry pie. Now you don't have to just do this with ginger too. I find that blueberries match up really beautifully with cinnamon, with nutmeg, with allspice. So if you wanted to make this have a flavor that was closer to like a holiday profile, then by all means add some cinnamon and nutmeg and allspice to this. That would be absolutely delicious. I'm just using ginger because it is sort of a really nice note. It goes well with the blueberries, but doesn't overpower them. But if you were going for more of like that cranberry sauce feel, then perhaps a cinnamony kind of flavor profile would also be really good. As you can see, I'm using my slotted spoon to skim out more blueberries because I don't want to change my headspace too much. It's a handy little trick to have, that you can use it sort of as a strainer. Woo. All right, last jar. And I do have a few more blueberries left over that didn't fit into the jars, and so I would recommend for those, just pop them in the refrigerator. They're not too many, but enough that you wouldn't want to trash them. There might even be enough for another half pint in here, so you know, up to you. All right, I'm going to use the handle of my spatula here and do a little hunt and peck for air bubbles. Now, of course, it's hard to see them when you're using these dark purple jars, so you just do your best. Assume that they're there and try to get them out. All right, lay that there, grab a paper towel to wipe my rims, and I like to just dip it in the hot water of the canning pot so that it's nice and warm. It'll whip through that, I'll move this so you can see better, whip through that sticky stuff right on the rims. Now I've got my lids, they're new, and just as a reminder, you don't have to simmer your lids anymore. As long as they're clean and new, they are ready to go right under the jars out of the box. So I'll pop these on there, and then I'm going to screw my rings, my bands on. And remember, fingertip tight. You don't want to tighten these any more tightly than you can really do with the tips of your fingers. I like to say that you take it to the point where it meets resistance, and then just a teeny tiny bit further, but no more than that. All right, so my jars are ready to go into the canning pot. Here we go. And I'm using the Ball electric canner, which I love, particularly now that tomato season is coming on, because I didn't have a pot that worked well on my stove for more than 4 quarts of tomatoes at a time. I have an old electric stove, and so just had a hard time coming up to a boil in like an old 7-quart holding canner. So this one I can get to a boil so easily, and I can do 7 quarts of tomatoes at a time instead of 4, which is kind of amazing. It is a revolution in my kitchen. So I'm going to put a lid on this pot, bring it up to a boil, and then once it hits a boil, we'll set our timer for 10 minutes, and that's all they need to do. Now, again, I am Marisa McClellan from Food in Jars, and I'm here today to talk about my gingery pickled blueberries on behalf of Fresh Preserving and Ball Canning. This season, they've been about the message made from here, and so for me, made from here means blueberries. Nothing better than New Jersey blueberries, and I feel really lucky to be able to have such great produce. And that's really it. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and you can find me at foodandjars.com. You can find my friends at Fresh Preserving on Twitter at Ball Canning, on Instagram at Ball Canning, and on Facebook at Ball Canning. And you can find me at Food and Jars at all of those places. Thanks a lot. Have a great day.